hopefully this is working. Thank you very much for inviting me. And Shiraz, you've got two chairs on this panel, which is very nice. I'm as was just said, the chair of the UAE branch of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators. Now, I was asked to talk about education and ADR capacity, and the questions that have been posed are with regard to training. Yes, in the UAE we have a lot of domestic arbitration, which is quite right, as my colleague has just mentioned. And in that regard, training locally is perfectly acceptable, so long as you're willing to just arbitrate in the local forum. For example, there's training in Arabic, and that's very useful when you have, thank you, sorry, I hope you heard me earlier. And that's very useful where you have two Arabic partners in arbitration, and so therefore you need Arabic-speaking arbitrators. Same with mediation. But of course arbitration, international arbitration, goes much wider than that. And in a sense, what we're looking at here also in Pakistan is a real backlog of cases in litigation where ADR can be helpful. How do you deal with that backlog? Well, steps are being taken to introduce ADR into Pakistan. The judiciary are supportive, the government is supportive, which obviously is a very good first step. But you need to train the ADR professionals. How do you train them? Well, there's much local training, as we have in the UAE, and that's very good for domestic arbitration and mediation. But those who wish to have a career in ADR, who wish to be arbitrators, who wish to be mediators, what should they be looking at? Because arbitration does cross borders. It does involve international parties. And sometimes it's important to be able to act as an arbitrator in different jurisdictions. Obviously, I would suggest you need to train with the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, because that's a worldwide training. It's recognized throughout the world. And as an example, actually, which I was going to deal with a little later, some arbitral centres, such as Singapore, SIAC, will only allow you onto their panel if you're a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators. To my mind, that's a good indication of the fact that you should be a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators. But how do you get there? I'll keep this relatively short because I could rattle on for quite a long time about training. But you'd start as a student, of course, become interested in ADR. Some of the universities here do in fact have courses on ADR, which is a very good start. You can join the institute as a student member and obtain information and indeed be able to network with like-minded people. If you find that ADR, be it arbitration or mediation, is something that you wish to pursue, you would first put your foot in the water. Take an introductory course. The introductory course gives you an understanding to ADR, the background of ADR. How does ADR support dispute cases? And gives you the knowledge, or at least the initial knowledge, of the processes and procedures in the various forms of ADR. And of course, once you've undertaken the initial course, you can become an associate of the institute, which would be a good thing. If you find this is something you really do wish to pursue, along with perhaps your work as a lawyer in litigation, you would move on. Now, I should mention that all the courses that we run are arbitration, international arbitration, mediation, and probably predominantly for the UK, construction adjudication. And all of the various levels of training that the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators has allows you to progress to member, and certainly with arbitration, to fellow. And it's only at the fellowship level where the Chartered Institute and you can feel comfortable that you have sufficient knowledge to be able to perhaps act as an arbitrator. If you take the mediation course, you can get accreditation as a mediator, That's not up to fellowship, that's membership. They're working or thinking about potential fellowship for mediation. But at the moment, the accreditation will allow you to be a member of the Chartered Institute. And accreditation as a mediator is also vitally important, I suggest, to allow you to understand the nuts and bolts of what mediation is and how to be successful as a mediator. It's not simply just chatting to the parties, there's a lot more to it than that. Each of these courses gives you a clear understanding of the legal framework, gives you the best practice and procedure in each of these areas, and certainly once you've gone through the stage one, module one, which is the pathway courses, I should mention that. Module one, it allows you to be a member. Now, what do I mean by the pathway courses? The pathway courses are a route for members of the Chartered Institute to progress first to membership and then to fellowship. And of course, as I've just said, fellowship is what you're aiming for should you wish to be a practitioner, certainly in arbitration. Mediation, I should mention, because mediation is something that's very important here in Pakistan, is a skill set that is about trying to bring parties together to find a solution to their problem, their dispute. It's not about the rights and wrongs of somebody's dispute. It's about finding a compromise which both parties can live with. It's a crucial difference between mediation and arbitration, or indeed adjudication. So again, it depends on your personality, perhaps, the sort of way you wish to work, if you wanted to become a mediator, or perhaps the more legalistic side of things, becoming an arbitrator. But in any event, to become a member, you take the module one of the pathway course, which allows you, as I said, to eventually become the mediator or arbitrator as a member. A shorter route for those who are experienced is the accelerated routes to membership and fellowship. If you have experience, and you can demonstrate that you have experience, that you have the knowledge, for example, of international arbitration or arbitration, that you can show that you know how to evaluate and apply the principles and requirements of an international arbitration or ordinary arbitration, you have an understanding and show an awareness of the practical tasks required for running an arbitration, then you could take the accelerated route firstly to membership, or if you are a practicing arbitrator, for example, to become a fellow. Now, these routes are much quicker because the pathway, the modules, will take possibly 3 years to complete. The accelerated route will take a much shorter time. They're run as a single course. Membership is a 3-day course. Fellowship is a 5-day course, of which, and that's online. If you do it face-to-face, it's of course much shorter. And I would recommend you do these courses face-to-face, quite frankly. You learn a great deal more, and you've got a much higher chance of passing the assessment, which of course comes at the end of each level. So Module 1, Law, Practice and Procedure. Module 2, Law of Obligations. Module 3, Award Writing. The first two you might be able to get an exemption from, depending on your background, the legal training you may have had. Module 3 is of course compulsory. The award writing is a difficult exam. It's got a pass mark of over 70%, and unfortunately I have to say this because I do believe this should be face-to-face if you can. Because of COVID, because of online training that's been occurring, people who've been taking the award writing course, there's been a greater degree of failure. And why is that? Because they're not engaged online as much as perhaps one would like. So if you are going to take the courses online, please be engaged. I like to pass people, not to fail them. As I said, the pathway courses take up to 3 years. The accelerated routes, if you already have experience, 3-5 days if it's online. It could be a weekend if you're doing it face-to-face. We also run diplomas in international commercial arbitration, which would also take you to fellowship, and a diploma in maritime arbitration, which is not just about arbitration and international arbitration. We look at other areas as well. So that was a very quick run through of the essential Chartered Institute of Arbitration training. Other training is undertaken. For example, in the UAE, we are about to embark on training for those who are already arbitrators, fellows, for a crossover course to undertake dispute board work. And it's important. It's not just about a dispute with dispute boards. It's about bringing the parties together before a dispute has to go to adjudication. And there are certain skills that you're not taught as an arbitrator. So we're running a course for that because it's important in the UAE. Abu Dhabi have introduced a new construction engineering contract based on FIDIC, but it has a mandatory standing dispute board, or DAAB in actual fact. So therefore, we need to find people who can act. We're also running the mediation courses face-to-face, and one of the problems with mediation in the UAE is how many mediators, accredited mediators, do we have in the UAE? We don't actually have that many, because predominantly in the commercial world, we've been looking at arbitration. So we have put together a list of mediators that those who wish to find a mediator can consult and therefore find, hopefully, the right mediator for their problem. Bringing me back to cross-border training. Cross-border training is incredibly important, that we know that the training we get can be applied in different jurisdictions. There are certain groups, such as the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, but the Royal Institute Chartered Surveyors, for example, ADR, ODR, which is more of a private organisation, but they deal with training that is relevant in many parts of the world. As I mentioned, for example, Singapore, to be on their panel, you need to be a fellow of the CIARB. Why am I mentioning this? Well, for those of you who wish to take this route to be an ADR practitioner, do you wish to just train domestically? If so, the local, yeah. The local, I'm being chased to finish. I'm just on my last page, we're okay. The local training, if you just wish to work in the local jurisdiction, is absolutely fine. And there's some very high-class courses. If you do wish to work internationally, or you wish to move your practice to another country, do make sure that the course you take is appropriate and that you can get on the various panels and that the accreditation you have is acceptable. Lastly, I have to congratulate Shiraz on his initiative that he introduced at the beginning of this session, bringing centres and practitioners together from different regions to try and help with not only training, but also providing the services to make ADR successful. So I will shut up there. Thank you, Shiraz.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. Just a very quick one, a very brief answer to like who delivers the CIARB training, and there are so many organizations that have accredited training. So what is the difference between those and the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators training?
Well, as I said, the Chartered Institute really is predominant in that it's recognized worldwide. It's considered the gold standard. If you've got to chartered arbitrator, for example, which you have to have quite a bit of experience as an arbitrator and prove yourself, that's definitely above the gold standard, which is fellowship, and proves your ability to anybody that you potentially might want to use you as an arbitrator, of your abilities, rather than taking a risk on someone who may not be quite as trained in that way. Fellowship is a gold standard. It's a high quality training with high quality tutors. It covers everything you need to know about arbitration and allows you to start practicing. Other institutions don't necessarily give you that. For example, in America, you've got the AAA, for example, but they don't actually train. They give courses on arbitration, but they don't actually train and give accreditation. And we give post-nominals, which allows people to see that you are of the quality that may be desired. Hopefully that answers your question, Shiraz.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, absolutely. The only way we get good ADR practitioners is by encouraging them at an early stage. So at university, when they're undertaking their law degree or indeed associated degrees, to actually understand the basics of ADR, understand how it works throughout the world, and why it is important in the legal circles to have a system, an alternate system to the courts. The courts, of course, do a great job, but they're completely backed up, as I mentioned earlier. And teaching students about ADR, getting involved in ADR, and therefore becoming ADR practitioners is the only way you're going to actually then have a system that reduces that backlog in the courts, because you'll have people who can deal with it.